Dinner was fine, the usual quiet hum of the local restaurant filling the air, the clink of silverware against plates, the smell of grilled meat and garlic in the air. But when Allison brought up the prenup, everything changed. We were sitting across from each other, a couple of bites into our entrees, when she said it like it was just another topic, like she was asking about the weather. "I've been thinking about the prenup," she said, slicing through her steak with an almost surgical precision. My stomach dropped, but I kept it together, smiling at her, nodding. I wasn't expecting this, not here, not now, but I didn't want to make a scene. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice even. She didn't look up from her plate. "I've been burned in the past," she continued, still cutting at her steak. "I just want to protect my assets, you know? It's nothing personal, just business." I couldn't believe it. There it was in black and white, my fiancée, the woman I thought I was building a future with, casually telling me she wanted to make sure she was financially safe in case things didn't work out. She wasn't even looking at me when she said it, like we were discussing a contract at work, not our life together. I nodded again. "Sure, I get it." I could feel the cold knot forming in my stomach, but I kept my face neutral. "I'll have my lawyer look it over." Inside, I was starting to feel sick. Was this how she saw me? Was it all about money to her? The way she talked about it, like it was just a transaction, made me feel small. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't let her see that. Allison glanced up at me, offering a tight smile. "You understand, right?" "Of course," I said, feeling like I was already losing her. But I had no idea how to pull it back. We finished dinner in silence, the weight of her words sitting between us like an uninvited guest. The check came, and I paid, still numb. As we walked out of the restaurant, I tried to shake off the tension, but it stuck with me. I realized as the night grew colder that something was off. The reality of what had just happened was starting to sink in. But I kept it to myself, unsure of what to do next. The drive home that night was a blur. I'd left the restaurant with a kind of fog hanging over me, not sure how I felt or what to think. By the time I parked in front of my apartment, the weight of the evening really started to sink in. I've built a life for myself that almost no one knows about. My company, TechSync, has made millions. I created a software that's been licensed by major companies across the globe. And yet, no one knows. Not my friends, not my family, certainly not Allison. I don't talk about it. Ever. I keep things quiet, as low-key as I can. It's not because I'm ashamed of it. It's more like I made a promise to myself years ago, after watching my parents struggle with money, that I would never let wealth mess with my relationships. I swore I wouldn't turn into one of those people who only hang out with others for what they can get out of them. I didn't want anyone to see me as a success because I feared that's all they'd see. I leaned back against the worn leather of my couch, the silence of my apartment settling around me, and tried to remember the last time we had talked about anything other than business. It felt like ages ago. I glanced over at the half-empty wine glass on the coffee table, its red contents swirling in the dim light. I wasn't sure if I was disgusted with her, with myself, or with the whole situation. But I was sure of one thing. This wasn't love, not the way I understood it. She didn't love me. She loved the idea of me, of what I could offer her. It didn't take long for the pattern to set in. Over the next few months, Allison started dropping more and more comments about money, usually in passing, like she wasn't even aware she was doing it. At first, I thought it was just her way of talking about her past, of getting things off her chest. She'd mentioned how her ex-husband left her with nothing, how his finances were a mess, and how she'd sworn never to let that happen again. I reassured her over and over that things wouldn't end the same way with me, but it didn't matter. The conversations didn't stop. Prenups came up more frequently, like it was a normal part of the discussion now. We'd be sitting at dinner, and she'd casually mention, "We need to make sure we have everything sorted out if we ever decide to buy a house together, you know? Just in case." It was like she was making plans for a backup life, one that didn't even involve me. I'd try to joke it off, tell her she was being paranoid, but I could feel the distance growing between us, like she was slipping further into a version of me that didn't feel real. Jake, my best man, made a joke at my expense one night over beers. "Man, you're dating way above your pay grade," he said, laughing like he was just messing around. "Hope you got a prenup ready, buddy." I chuckled along with him, but inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe he was right. Maybe I was just another rung on her ladder, another way for her to secure the future she wanted. Then came the talk about moving in together. She'd been pushing it for months, suggesting places we could look at, neighborhoods, dream homes. I wasn't against the idea. I'd love to live with her, to take that next step. But every time she brought it up, she'd always end with something like, we definitely have to figure out the financial stuff before we do anything serious. It felt like a condition, like she couldn't make a decision without knowing the numbers first. I tried to keep my head above water, not giving in to the nagging doubt that seemed to follow me every day. I'd grown used to keeping my wealth under wraps, to blending in with the background, but with her, it felt like I was being forced into a role I hadn't signed up for. Late one night, as we lay in bed, the light from the street lamp outside flickering through the blinds, I heard her say something that made my stomach churn. I just want to make sure we're both financially protected. We'll never know what might happen, right? She wasn't even looking at me when she said it, just staring up at the ceiling, her fingers tracing small circles on the sheets. Something in her voice, something subtle, shifted in me. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the security. Her words, so casual, hit me harder than I expected. I stared at the prenup Allison's team had sent me, the document in front of me feeling heavier than it should have been. The words were blurry at first, like they didn't even want to make sense. But the more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't about protecting assets. This was about control. The first clause that hit me hard was about joint property. The prenup heavily favored her in how joint property would be divided. My stomach churned as I read it again. So, all the things we'd build, the life we'd share, would belong to her, even if I put in every dime. But that wasn't the worst part. The clause about spousal support was even worse. She wanted to waive any right to it, no matter the reason we split. It felt wrong, like she was already planning the exit strategy, making sure I couldn't come back and ask for a damn thing if things went sideways. But the last clause, that one really got me. The engagement ring. It had to be returned if we divorced, with a specific valuation attached. The thought of that ring, the one I'd picked out because I thought I was giving her something meaningful, being reduced to a dollar amount, hit me like a punch in the gut. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and called my lawyer. When I explained what I was looking at, his response was quick. "This is absurd," he said, his voice tight with disbelief. "These clauses are skewed heavily in her favor. It's not a prenup. It's a contract. She's treating the potential marriage like a business deal." I could barely breathe. I ran my hands over my face, feeling the weight of everything sink in. "So, what do I do now?" I asked, the question heavy in my throat. "You respond, negotiate, but I don't like how it's all laid out," he said. "This isn't about protecting assets. This is about controlling the relationship. She's securing herself, and it's clear she's only thinking about what she stands to gain." The words hit me like a slap. I didn't want to believe it, but how could I ignore it now? This wasn't just about money. Allison wasn't in this for the love or partnership. She was in it for something else, something I couldn't even put my finger on until now. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, the silence in my apartment feeling suffocating. I stared at the prenup again, but it wasn't the clauses that stuck with me anymore. It was the realization that I had been blind, thinking she was with me because of me. I had built my life in silence, hiding my success from everyone, but none of that mattered now. I was seeing clearly for the first time. Allison's interest in me wasn't about who I was, it was about what I could give her. I ran my fingers through my hair, pacing in circles around the apartment. My lawyer's advice was clear. I could respond, we could negotiate, but it wasn't just about the document anymore. This was about something bigger, about reclaiming my dignity, about putting an end to a relationship that was built on false pretenses. I didn't need to prove my worth through money, through what I could offer. And I wasn't going to let her make me feel like I was just a stepping stone for her to reach a bigger prize. I knew it was time to act. No more waiting. No more pretending I hadn't seen the writing on the wall. I called my lawyer the next morning and told him to draft a counter-proposal, something that looked reasonable at first glance but would force her hand. I wanted full financial disclosure from both sides. I wanted Allison to come clean about everything, her assets, her income, any hidden interests she might have tucked away. If she wanted transparency, I was going to give it to her. But she had no idea what she was asking for. I knew the counter-proposal would shake things up, but I was ready. The reality hit me hard as I hung up the phone. I hadn't realized how much I'd been pretending, For years, I'd played the role of the humble guy who'd worked hard to make something of himself. I was the small-town guy who made it big, but never flaunted it. I'd kept everything quiet because I didn't want to be seen as one of those people who measured their worth by the things they owned, or the success they'd achieved. But now, I was realizing how much of my life I'd spent hiding in plain sight. Allison, and everyone else for that matter, had no idea who I really was. They didn't know what I'd built, how far I'd come, and maybe it was time for that to change, not for anyone else, but for me. I spent the next few days gathering every document I could find: bank statements, contracts, business valuations, tax returns. It felt strange to lay it all out in front of me, to see just how far I'd come. Part of me wanted to hide it all again, to shove it back into the drawers and forget about it, but I didn't. Because this wasn't just about money, it was about respect. I'd spent so much time thinking I had to prove something, that I needed to be more than I was for her, for anyone. But now, I realized I didn't need to prove a damn thing. I wasn't hiding behind my wealth anymore. I wasn't going to let her treat me like a stepping stone to something else. This was about showing her who I really was, showing her that I wasn't going to play by her rules anymore. When the counter-proposal came through, I took one last look at it. The terms were fair, but the financial disclosure was non-negotiable. The ball was in her court now. If she wanted to protect herself, she'd have to put everything on the table, every little thing. I thought about what I was going to say when we met. How would I explain all of this without sounding bitter, without making it seem like I was accusing her of something? But in the end, I knew there was no easy way. I had to be direct, no more dancing around the truth. The day of the meeting came, and I was ready. My stomach was tight, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't the guy I used to be. I was someone else now, someone who had taken control of his own life. And if Allison didn't like that, then maybe we weren't meant to be together after all. As I looked over the documents one last time, I realized something else. This wasn't just about a prenup. We sat down in a conference room, the kind with polished wood tables and a cold corporate feel that made everything feel more formal than it should have been. Allison was already there, sitting across from me with her lawyer at her side. She looked calm, maybe even a little too composed, like she had the upper hand. "I've worked with my lawyer to make sure the prenup is fair for both of us," she said, her voice smooth, like this was just another business transaction. She smiled at me, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's just to protect us, Dave. You know that." I didn't answer right away. I was watching her lawyer, a stoic guy in a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He didn't give anything away. His face was a mask. I could see Allison glancing at him every now and then, looking for validation. I wasn't sure if she was looking for reassurance or approval, but it didn't matter. My lawyer was a quiet presence beside me, his eyes scanning the documents in front of him. Then came the moment. My lawyer slid the counter-proposal across the table. The silence stretched, and I could feel the shift in the room. Allison's lawyer took a moment to look over the counter-proposal. His eyes flicked up to me, then back down to the paper, a brief flash of surprise crossing his face. He wasn't expecting this. It was obvious. The corners of my lips twitched upward as I noticed it. Allison wasn't smiling anymore either. "According to this," my lawyer began, pointing to the clause about financial transparency, "both parties are required to provide a full and complete disclosure of assets, including any hidden financial interests." I could feel Allison's posture change, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. She sat a little straighter, her gaze shifting between the documents and me. I saw the calm mask crack for a second, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Maybe it was frustration, or maybe fear. She quickly recovered, but the tension in the room was palpable now. Her lawyer's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, he seemed slightly less confident. "Dave, I don't understand why this is necessary," Allison said, her voice a little more clipped than before. "I've already made it clear that I want us to be equal in this. We don't need to go digging around in each other's finances." But I was already done with the pretense. I'd let her play her hand long enough. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," I said, my voice steady. "No more hiding. If I'm going to be transparent, I expect the same from you." She hesitated for a moment, and in that second, I felt something shift in the room. It wasn't the control I had been expecting, but I could see the realization dawning on her. The power was shifting, and it was impossible for her to ignore. Her smile was gone now, replaced with something else. Something defensive. She started to open her mouth, but my lawyer spoke before she could. "We're not here to make you uncomfortable, Allison," he said coolly, his eyes never leaving the papers in front of him. "But we are here to make sure both sides are treated fairly." The wall she'd built started crumbling, bit by bit. She was no longer the confident woman pushing for a deal stacked in her favor. Now she was just another person in the room, and she wasn't used to it. I could feel a quiet surge of satisfaction growing inside me. Not because I was winning. This wasn't about winning. It was about being seen, being respected. It was about setting things straight. I sat back in my chair, watching her closely. She wasn't so sure of herself anymore. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a prenup. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't put into words until now. I wasn't going to let anyone, especially her, take me for granted. The room felt too small, the air too thick. The tension was suffocating, and I knew it was time. I reached for the folder in front of me, the one containing my full financial disclosure, and slid it across the table to Allison. Her lawyer looked over at me, but I didn't care about him anymore. This wasn't about him. It was about her. Allison's hands trembled slightly as she took the papers. Her fingers skimmed over the first page, and I watched her face shift from a practiced calm to something closer to disbelief. Her eyes flicked over the numbers, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The documents weren't just about money. They were a reflection of who I really was, everything I'd built on my own, everything she hadn't known. I could feel her pause on the pages, the confusion in her expression deepening as she tried to digest the sheer scale of what she was reading. Her face went pale, like someone had knocked the wind out of her. She stumbled through the pages, flipping them faster, like maybe if she looked hard enough, she'd find some mistake, some explanation for what was in front of her. But there was no mistake. The truth was there, all laid out. Millions in assets, business valuations, contracts, investments, all the things she'd never known because I never told her. And now she couldn't pretend that it wasn't there. I sat back, calm on the outside, but inside I was fighting the urge to shake her, to scream, "This is who I am. This is what you didn't see." But I didn't. I kept my voice steady, my eyes locked on her. "Allison," I said, my voice quiet, "I'm not angry, just disappointed." She looked up at me, her eyes wide, like she wasn't sure if she was seeing things right. "Dave, I didn't—" I held up a hand, cutting her off. "I thought we had something real," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I thought it was about trust, about love. But I can see now. It was just about what I could provide. And I'm done." Her face twisted in panic, the confidence she'd worn so well slipping away. "Dave, no, wait, I didn't—" I stood up, not waiting for her to finish. I couldn't listen to the excuses anymore. The words, the manipulation, it was all too much. I grabbed my coat and walked toward the door, the sound of her voice chasing me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. As the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a finality settle over me. This chapter of my life was over. I had been blind for too long, believing in a version of Allison that didn't exist. I had let myself believe that she saw me for who I was, but she hadn't. She'd seen only what she could take from me. The phone rang in my pocket as I reached my car. I didn't need to check it. I knew who it was. I'd already decided what to do. I silenced the call, watching the screen go dark. She could apologize all she wanted, but I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. I drove off, the city lights fading in the rearview mirror. The road ahead was empty, and for the first time in a long time,